Hello there, this is Darshan Maharaja. Welcome to the 31st episode of the Elevator Chat series of our Canadian journey. I'm sure it has not escaped your attention that reaction in Canada to the Israel-Hamas war is playing out as if it is a domestic Canadian issue rather than a foreign one. In this context, allow me to remind you that in a recent episode, I said that our peculiar form of multiculturalism has turned that concept into multipoliticalism, where so many Canadians occupy more than one political space. That is, in addition to the Canadian one, they also occupy the political space of the country of their origin. Allow me to add here that the inevitable consequence of this is that any dissenting opinion on a foreign issue makes one a domestic political enemy. I had first-hand experience of this over the past 6 weeks, where every time I spoke about ratcheting down the tensions in Canada over the war between Israel and Hamas, typically I did this on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, which of course impacts civilians on both sides, this war. A lot of people responded to these posts of mine to the effect that I was siding with Israel, which according to these people is a, quote, genocidal regime, end quote. Something similar to this happened yesterday as well, that is on Thursday, November the 16th. What happened was that there was yet another reported instance of the vandalization of a Canadian business location, this time in Toronto. I am given to understand that this business is located in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. So the initial interpretation that I heard was that this was intended or maybe had the effect of intimidating the local Jewish population. So I posted the following on Twitter, that is X, quote, "The most effective way to stop these attacks on Jewish establishments would be for the Muslim community leaders to call for stopping them. If any such leader has done that, I would appreciate you sharing the link with me so I can spread it around," end quote. Over the course of the day, a couple of respondents did share two different links of the same story of a Muslim leader in Montreal issuing a call to keep emotions in control while expressing support for Palestinians. But many of the other responses were along the lines of treating the Israel-Hamas war as a Canadian issue. I will narrate some of these responses in a bit, but my conclusion from these responses is that in the opinion of these respondents, the safety of the life and property of Jews in Canada is of secondary importance, if at all it is important, compared to the war in the Middle East. If we extend this conclusion to its terminal point, it means that they no longer believe that all Canadians should be kept safe, but rather that the safety of Canadians inside Canada is at the mercy of international developments. Turning to the kind of responses that I received, many of them misinterpreted my post to mean that I was blaming all Muslims for the violence aimed at Jews in Canada, whereas I was just requesting links to calls for peace from Muslim leaders so I could spread them, and I did spread the one story that I received. A few of them blamed me for making an Islamophobic post, whereas my intention to spread messages for peace in Canada from Muslim leaders is actually the opposite. Some others dragged in my identity as a Hindu from India, and made disparaging remarks about me or about all Hindus in general or about stuff happening in India, which has nothing to do with the safety of Canadian Jews. Now let us turn to some individual examples of these responses. Here is one Robert Hodgson, quote, "Well, maybe Jewish leaders should also be calling for Israel to stop the genocide," end quote. As I said earlier, The contention here is that the safety of Jews in Canada depends on what happens elsewhere. Here is someone else who goes by the X handle ESSAAR. Quote, very Islamophobic statement from this person. There are people of many faiths who do not support this war and genocide. Stop making this into a religious matter. It is purely a division between pro-war and anti-war members of society. End quote. I find it curious that according to this person, targeting Jews for violence is a valid form of being anti-war. There is a bit of irony here, maybe more than a bit. Finally, here is X handle called End the Occupation Now with an exclamation mark at the end. Quote, this is a geopolitical issue. End quote. Once again, I reiterate my opinion that safety of Canadians inside Canada shouldn't depend on events happening elsewhere in the world. There are many more responses of such nature, but you get the drift. The war between Israel and Hamas has been Canadianized to such a degree that many Canadians are not aghast at the fact that other Canadians, in this case Jews, are being targeted for acts of violence in the context of that war. Rather, they either endorse it tacitly or try to make the safety of Jews contingent on what happens in the Middle East. The need to ensure the safety of all Canadians is no longer an ironclad one in their view, which is why I am saying that this is now, this war is Canadianized because they are thinking like participants in that war. I believe that this is unhealthy. It cannot have good outcomes in the future, perhaps even in the near future. What is your opinion? Let me know in the comments. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, goodbye and be well, especially if you are a Jew in Canada.